Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into your favorite, ProRevenge. Before we start today's Would You Rather question, would you rather never eat your favorite food again for the rest of your life, or only eat your favorite food every day for the rest of your life? Let me know in the comment section down below. Our first story today comes to us from I Am Herding Cats. I'm a team builder. Let's jump right in. A few years ago, I was sitting in a job interview and the hiring manager asked, "What do you consider the greatest accomplishment of your career?" This gave me pause, as I've been doing the same thing for over 25 years. I let the mists of memory transport me back in time. Dorian, the nurse manager, Kip, the program manager, Dr. Steve, the clinical director. Yes, I had 3 bosses. I started on the unit as an already seasoned, jaded RN, and soon discovered that most staff who worked there were very, very young and inexperienced. For many, this was their first real job. They assumed all the weird stuff that happened every day was just normal for the workplace. Dorian had decreed that no one was allowed to write incident reports for med errors or safety issues because it makes me look bad in safety huddle. Non-clinical staff allowed to pass meds, scheduled changes without notice. Additionally, the department was easily the most toxic I've ever worked in, with various cliques at constant war with one another. I could go on and on. The troubles began one day when I opened my email to a message from Dorian which stated very curtly that I was being investigated for an incident which had happened on the unit, that I was to meet with HR to discuss it, and for possible disciplinary action. I was not to discuss the incident with anyone. No date was given, no medical record number, no indication what the issue could be. I replied that I would need the above information, would speak with my union rep, and meet at a time convenient for me. Dorian declined to give information. I declined to meet with him. I began receiving emails almost daily, each more threatening than the last. I printed them all, contacted my sister, the employment attorney, tried not to start shaking whenever I had to check my email. I was keenly aware that this is intimidation 101, but it is remarkably effective even when you know that. Because I'm not a direction follower, I was soon discussing this in the break room, and before I knew it, had been approached by 3 other women who had all received the same email on the same day. Comparison showed the emails being sent about a minute apart. We did not work the same shifts nor the same days. We agreed to call in the union rep and refused to meet with HR. Dorian continued to escalate, including cornering us in the hall, stepping in chest to chest and trying to stare us down. He was a very big guy. Before long, we were speaking to more and more women, and it came to light that Dorian had a habit of targeting them with this exact email, followed by others that were more and more threatening, until the person would finally meet with HR, get written up for something vague, and then be forced to sign a non-disclosure, no retaliation agreement. It seemed that he had simply picked the wrong 4 women this time because we were not having it. I can't tell you how much time at work began to be spent with people crying while recounting their stories. None had thought to call in the union rep. They did not even know their Weingarten rights. We began to plot. We had limited time, and our company has a long and unglamorous history of protecting people like this. Before long, the entire team was united against the common enemy. LGBTQ staff wrote up statements, backed with witnesses, of grossly homophobic comments, often in the presence of patients. Staff who were immigrants made statements about racial slurs. A staff who was incredibly petty and vindictive had been compiling a dossier on every perceived policy violation and wrongdoing on Dorian's part since his hiring date, and he prepped it for presentation to HR. The graveyard shift, all huge men, said, "Obviously Dorian isn't trying to flex on us, but we want to help." So they spent a couple nights cruising Dorian's social media posts and capturing screenshots of homo, trans, xenophobic, and misogynistic content. Worried that they hadn't done enough, the night staff paid for a cheap background check, and what a score! DUI, failure to appear, hit and run, domestic violence, assault with a deadly weapon. Did the company not do a background check? WTF. Finally, 2 women came forward with complaints of sexual harassment. One incident had even occurred in the presence of the assistant manager, and one was documented in an email. We were ready. We flooded HR with meeting requests, and our union rep coordinated the assault so that on Monday we met for simple harassment and intimidation. I met first, and HR seemed unimpressed by my complaint. Tuesday, all LGBTQ and staff subjected to racial slurs made their formal complaints. They said that the HR lady looked tired. Wednesday started with the background check, moved into the minutia of policy violation, and culminated with well-documented quid pro quo sexual harassment. The union rep informed HR that the union's attorney was eager to know how to proceed. HR assured her that would not be necessary. That evening, Dorian posted a sign on his office door saying he would be away for a few days and to contact Kip or Dr. Steve if we needed anything. Graveyard Shift reported that over the weekend, housekeeping came and removed everything from his office except his name tag, which the night staff took as a trophy. On Monday at shift change, the CNO, COO, and HR met with the team and informed us that, effective immediately, Dorian was no longer employed by the hospital. We all sat silently and politely until they exited the unit, when a loud and spontaneous cheer went up. People were hugging each other and cry laughing. High fives all around. Aftermath. To the best of my knowledge, Dorian never worked as an RN again. Frankly, I don't care. Kip was fired 3 days later for having been aware of all that was going on and turning a blind eye. And because apparently he'd been touching women on the unit for a couple years. I hadn't been aware of that, but it came out in the HR meeting. Dr. Steve was also fired for sexual harassment. The unit hired an old manager of mine who had a long and well-documented history of, you guessed it, sexual harassment. I quit within days of him being offered the job. The department's foray into getting along crumbled. Most of the staff have moved on to other jobs where they seem much happier. What do you consider the greatest accomplishment of your career? I sat up straight, smiled, and said, I took a very fractured team and brought them together to achieve a common goal. I like to think I'm really good at team building. Sometimes it only takes one brave voice to get everybody else rallied behind a cause. In this case, getting a piece of human scum removed from a workplace. What I don't understand is why the company would bring somebody else in who has a history of doing what they just fired people for. That makes absolutely no sense at all. Do me a quick favor and take a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're actually not subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This next story comes to us from Mr. Cheese Gummy Bear. Ew. Bully in the jungle. Let's jump right in. I want to share a story from my childhood. I'm not 100% sure it can be called pro, but it certainly felt pro to me. This happened somewhere between 1994 and 1999. Back then, we lived on a military base in the country where I'm from. Most of the kids in my street knew each other and normally played together and had a lot of fun, except for Oliver and his two goons. Oliver was a little older than us, but much stronger and a lot meaner. Because it was such a close community, we crossed each other all the time. Martial arts, all together, and Oliver kicked our butts. Playing out in the street, we needed to keep away from his house just in case he was there. Oliver was our full-blown bully. Behind our houses, after you crossed the property line of each backyard, there was a huge forest, more like a jungle, and my friends and I would explore the jungle almost every day. Me being the person that knew more of the land, mostly because my dad trained me to know wherever since I was like 5, so I wouldn't get lost. At the same time, I learned to make small rope traps, tripwires, and little things like that. I loved trapping and catching my next door neighbor's chickens. Because of this, my friends and I created the Jungle Challenge, where I would create a bunch of tripwire traps and counterweight pulley traps, the kind that you step on a branch and a rope would catch your foot and pull you, in a part of the jungle behind my house. Honestly, I made a couple and took credit for the vines and holes in the area. Years go by, and one day, my dad decides to create a little goat pen deep in the jungle part behind my house. Me knowing that he was going to go deeper than what we, kids, were allowed to go, asked to tag along and go with him, and he said yes. Guys, it was awesome. The spot he picked was right after a tree formation that made a little roundabout. Enough backstory, let's get to the revenge. One day, I find myself alone behind the gym where we had our karate and jiu-jitsu classes. All my friends went home for the day, and I hear behind, hey, Oliver is there with this brand new orange belt. So I hear you're now in 2 different classes. Yeah, my dad put me in them. He wants, do you think you can beat me? I get nervous. You think that taking more classes you'll kick my butt or something? No, at that moment, he fully kicks my chest and stomach, getting me winded. No matter what you do, you won't beat me. He leaves, and I go home after crying and composing myself. I needed to stop this, but how? He was stronger than me, older than me, and just a brute. Then it clicked. I have only confronted him in his terrain, with his rules, where he had the upper hand. So I came up with a plan. I created a trap at the tree roundabout where if you triggered a tripwire, a big, heavy, old, and rusted car part that I found back there, later I learned it was an old car transmission part, would fall from above. After a few hours of setting up and asking my friends about Oliver, we always knew where he and his friends were, so we didn't cross paths, and they told me. I went over and, from a safe distance, screamed, "Hey, buttface," or something like that. "I'm tired of your crap, we're settling this today." I threw a small rock and ran for dear life. When I started heading to the jungle, Oliver's 2 friends stopped him and said to him, "Dude, I think this is a bad idea." Oliver shoulder shrugs them off and said something that I couldn't hear and continued chasing me. He followed me to the roundabout, tripping and falling a lot, which made me extremely happy, and I thought it is going to work. I jump in the center of the circle, but he stops, looks around, looks at me, and then looks down and sees the fishing line. Oliver looks up at me and says, "Do you think I'm stupid? I can totally see this." Steps over the line and branch cracks, fast zipping noise. Oliver looks down at his foot, looks where the line is zipping on the tree to his right, and looks up and bam, right on his head. I was extremely happy. But then Oliver dropped. Didn't get hit hard on the head and start crying like I envisioned, just dropped. I see blood. So I panicked and ran straight home. I run through my backyard, passing Oliver's friends, and lock myself in home. Hours go by and nothing happens, but I'm scared, terrified. The main reason why I'm so afraid is that this is a military base. If a kid gets lost, it's a huge deal. So what normally happened is that if a kid got lost, their friends, would come to get me or one of my friends, because all kids in this part of the base knew that we were the weird kids that were always out there. And within an hour or so, we would come back with the kid and no big deal, if the kid was unharmed. I don't want to be the one having to go get Oliver or find him, because then the adults need to get involved, and that was just going to be horrible. It was getting dark by now. Everyone was supposed to be home, but I hear that they were still looking for him. Turns out that he walked out of the jungle a little before 7, not completely dark yet, and made it home. The next day, his friends came by. Oliver refused to talk about it, and from then on, we never spoke about it. He didn't mess with me or my friends, and never again approached me. Every now and then, one of my friends would ask if it was true that you took Oliver to the jungle and kicked his butt, but I wouldn't answer. Part out of fear and part out of pride, I guess. And that's how I took revenge on my first bully. OP, this one goes way too far. You could have killed that kid. In fact, I think you're extremely lucky that you didn't. I do understand that this story was about 30 years ago and you're writing about it on Reddit, so I'd assume you haven't done anything else that dumb going forward that resulted in hurting somebody else. So that's a good thing. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.